Lady of the Republic of Rwanda. You may be seated. Your Excellency, the First Lady of the Republic of Rwanda, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good morning, bonjour, muraho. My name is Anik Ishimwe. I am a biomedical engineer with the Rwanda Biomedical Center, and I will be your moderator today. We have an exciting session ahead, where we will first hear opening remarks from our guest of honor, followed by a panel of experts who will be looking at the current landscape of women in biotechnology and biomanufacturing with the goal of improving women's health. We will also discuss how different stakeholders are addressing the issue of gender inclusivity in this space. Without any further ado, I'd like to invite our guest of honor, Her Excellency the First Lady, to give us our opening remarks. Thank you.
Honorable ministers here present, healthcare professionals and stakeholders, partners and friends, ladies and gentlemen, my dear sister Didi, good morning. How delightful to host this Women Deliver conference and to see so many advocates of women empowerment in attendance. If this great turnout is indeed the result of years of efforts and investments, in the achievement of gender equality, we can only be proud and encouraged. Our dear guests, the COVID-19 pandemic was yet another painful lesson for the world on our interdependency as people, irrespective of gender, from global north to global south. Indeed, COVID attested that one positive case was one too many, turning loved ones into threats of possibly fatal infection, making us erect barriers against those we cohabited with and wish to be closest to in times of worry. I call that poetic injustice. The fact that we were forced into painful and lengthy isolation as a cruel reminder of how lost and lonely we can become without a community on which to rely and with which to engage. So how could we reject the responsibility of protecting and uplifting every single one of these community's members and of being each other's keepers at an individual and leadership level? The answer is simple: we cannot and we must not. Ladies and gentlemen, as we brave the pandemic, we watch holding our breath as women assisted in the creation, production, and unrolling of a vaccine that should have taken a decade of efforts in under a year. These women saved lives, protected our economy, and watched over our communities while carrying the additional burdens, domestic, familial, or social, that unjustly compounded on them in times of crisis. What a gift to witness women around the world, and indeed in Rwanda, excelling in spaces from which they were once kept at arm's length. Rwandan women are at the forefront of different levels of leadership in science, technology, and education. Our constitution states that at least 30% of those employed by institutions must be women. At the present time, 61% of our parliamentarians are women. More than half of our cabinet members are women. And yes, the majority of our judiciary agents, 53% to be specific, are women. Perhaps this is the reason that Rwandan women feel centered in our country's governance. Perhaps this is why we feel that gender equality may be soon within our reach if we maintain our current pace of progress, our current determination to overcome the gender gap. And our resolve was fortified by the report that during the pandemic, at a time when gender equality was falling behind the world over, the Global Gender Gap report listed Rwanda as the 7th most gender equal society in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the empowerment of women must be considered, among others, to be a moral and a global health issue, and global health problems can only be solved by comprehensive global health solutions. The Global South and North must increasingly work together, not only in times of crisis, but consistently. And in this stride, we must foster a collaborative environment that promotes inclusivity and enhances the overall effectiveness of medical advancements. Ladies and gentlemen, the critical role of biopharmaceutical research and manufacturing in improving women's health cannot be overstated. Through our collective efforts, we can strengthen our women's involvement in biopharmaceutical research and manufacturing. It's essential, logical, deserved, and highly overdue that women should have a seat at the table when decisions are made regarding their health care. If progress, social justice, and health for all are the objectives, let us pledge to stay united in demanding space for women, listening to women, and uplifting women at personal and collective advocacy and policy planes. When the right policies are in place, systems are resilient, and when systems are resilient, they protect their own, no matter the scale of the threat encountered. Let these prevailing systems be what we leave behind at the dusk of our service to our cherished communities. I thank you for your kind attention, and is it the afternoon yet? Good end of the day, the morning.
Thank you very much to our guest of honor for these opening remarks. We'll shortly just discuss the session's objectives before introducing our panelists. As our guest of honor mentioned, biopharmaceutical research and manufacturing play a most critical role in developing medical products that improve population health. The current situation of research and development shows that there is significantly limited women's representation within this space, despite the fact that some conditions both affect women disproportionately and carry a heavy burden of disease. There are also concerns about differential efficacy in these therapies between men and women, which shows us that there is a need for very meaningful inclusion of women in order for us to make sure that there is full and equal access to these life-saving treatments that would create better health outcomes for women and girls. We will also be discussing the current challenges in financing and investing in this kind of research and development that is aimed towards improving women's health. So I will introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is the current site head at BioNTech Rwanda. He has over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing space and has played a pivotal role in creating very high-performing teams within this sector. He has also successfully led the establishment of manufacturing facilities from scratch. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Mr. Aneto Okeke to the stage. Our second panelist currently served as the Deputy Director of Global Programs at the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation. In this role, her focus is on developing and supporting the global programs team strategy and partnerships with a wide range of global health actors, which includes governments, other funders, and multilateral organizations. Allow me to welcome Ms. Liz Bird to the stage. Our third panelist is the Minister of Health here in Rwanda. He holds extensive experience in infectious and non-communicable disease program design, strategic planning, and implementation science. He has also personally contributed to several large research projects, including clinical trials, both in Rwanda and multicultural research collaboration. Allow me to welcome Dr. Sabin to the stage. Our final panelist is a researcher with the Reagan Institute of MDH, MIT, and Harvard in Cambridge, USA. In the course of the last 10 years, she has been studying immunopathologies and is currently pursuing a postdoctoral fellowship in the US with a focus on infectious diseases. Her goal is to drive improvements in clinical care through cost-effective approaches. Welcome to the stage, Dr. Nadej. As you can see, we have a very diverse range of panelists. We will start our questions today with Dr. Nadej. As we mentioned earlier, women's representation is still low at every single stage of research and development. For example, pregnant and lactating women are often excluded out of clinical trials, which means that there's an obvious gap in healthcare delivery and the services that they get. How do you think we can address this kind of inequality?
Thank you, Annick. Can you hear me? And I would like to thank the organizers of Women Deliver conference. I'm really happy to be here today. Is it better? Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. And to go back to your question, yes, clinical trials must consider better the heterogeneity among women, and they need to be more adapted to women. And for the case of pregnant people, we've seen over the years many studies show how the immune response in pregnant women, so their capacity to adapt and to protect themselves against diseases, or all these defenses are lower in pregnant women because they need to keep their baby and not attack them, right? So it's really important for them to have a lower immune response so that they don't attack the baby, but at the same time, they're more vulnerable to infectious diseases. So we really need to find treatment, vaccines that will be more adapted to them. And at the same time, their unborn baby they're more vulnerable to infectious disease once they are born. We know that their immune response is lower than adult, they're more fragile. And if we vaccinate women while they're pregnant, they will have an activation of their immune response, which is going to be also beneficial for the babies. So all the more reasons to find treatments and specific vaccines that will be beneficial not only for the pregnant women, but also their babies. And the issue is that instead of including them more in clinical trials, they tend to be excluded to protect them. But what needs to be done is really to adapt the therapeutic approaches that we have today that will take into account their vulnerability in order to protect them better and also protect their kids. And talking about clinical trials in general, what we see today is that clinical trials will try to have as many, they will be well balanced in terms of gender. They will have as many women as they have men. They will be balanced in terms of age, origins, and so on. But the big issue is that they don't take into account the heterogeneity among women. It's not enough to just take the same age of women and men. We need to also focus more within women because a small variability in age among men doesn't have so much impact, but in women it does because of their weight, their hormone levels, because of the fact that they will get closer to menopause. So it's really important to understand the mechanisms happening in women, take into account the heterogeneity in that population so that we will eventually have therapeutic approaches that will be better adapted to them. Also for the women who want to have kids, it will be better adapted to the kids as well, in order eventually to have a more personalized medicine that will protect women and also their kids if they want to have kids.
you so much. Thank you so much, Nadej, with a very pertinent point. It's not only about representation, but it's just logical. Like you said, the heterogeneity.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Our next question is for Aneto. With the pandemic and everything that's been going on, it became so glaring that countries really need to invest in developing the capacity for vaccines, diagnostics, therapeutics. A critical step in this being able to happen is to develop the necessary human capacity, the necessary human potential, as well as attracting the financial and technical investment. According to you, how can this be achieved, and with a special focus on engaging women in this field of biotechnology and biomanufacturing?
Thank you very much to the Women Deliver Conference for inviting me. Really happy to be here to talk about this topic, which it's a topic that I really, really love, based on my different years in manufacturing and how I've seen women involvement really, really grow. Clearly, when we come to the manufacturing space, one of the things that impact manufacturing as a whole, for even the company to be here to try to look for people to build, is the ease of doing business. So each country needs to create that environment. For a company like BioNTech, we've been happy that even in Rwanda here, we've been given that environment whereby the ease of doing business has been great. And so when the ease of doing business is there, then people are willing to invest and create that opportunity for people. Now the next point is that when that opportunity comes, you want to focus on women. You also want that women are available for those opportunities. And it comes by encouraging the change of the constant norms. Because in manufacturing, people first think about what? Engineers. And in the old adage, when they think of engineers, they think of a male-dominated field. But this has changed over time. So the first point is to actually drive that encouragement that it's a level playing field, which the country and the industry is, driving, but it has to be deliberate. So my first word is that actions have to be deliberate, because even when you're looking for people, you have to be deliberate that this role, I can hire a woman for this role. Currently in BioNTech, we've been able to have diversity as our key goal. And globally, our diversity is, the percentage of women is above 50%. And currently, even in Rwanda, the percentage of women in the workforce is 50%. We have not looked at different roles. I felt there's a role meant for a man and there's a role meant for a woman. So now that we're here, we look at a role whereby people can qualify for that role. We have women as construction managers. We have women as facility managers. And this drives the encouragement that any young female engineer in the university can see that and know that there's a role for me to play. We have women doing several research works across BioNTech. So the first thing that the company needs to have that diversity goal to make sure that it's a level playing field. And another deliberate action is to create a women network. I have worked in different companies and where we have the women network, whereby women can be mentored by senior managers, by other women that have been successful in the industry. And this drives more women involvement. This gives them the fact that they've stepped foot into the door as an engineer, as someone in manufacturing, and they can pursue their career to greater heights because they can see examples, they are being encouraged, and they are being coached. So this is key to be able to continue to drive the business and ensure that there's women involvement in manufacturing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your insights from inside the manufacturing industry. My next question is for Liz Bird. We have evidence that there are conditions that the conditions that affect women more than men tend to garner less funding which undoubtedly has an effect on research. What kind of initiatives can funding entities that support research and development implement to really foster the prioritization of gender-responsive research and product development?
Thank you so much for having me on this panel. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. So, it's so nice to be with my other colleagues here. So in terms of what funders can do, I mean, I think at its core, we need to start by looking at the public health need that's out there for women's health. And I won't repeat what others have said, but you know, if you just look at a few statistics, like 200 million women needing access to contraception, 25 million unsafe abortions. In sub-Saharan Africa today, still a 15-year-old has a 1 in 40 chance of dying from a pregnancy-related cause. And I won't repeat other conditions in which you know, disproportionately affect women, not to mention women's physiology, right, that responds differently to medications. So for philanthropic partners, which is where I sit, and development partners, investing in women's health products is a no-brainer. If you just look at some of those statistics and the need that's out there for these products. In addition, you add on top of that the benefits that we all know of improving women's health and its effect on economic development and growth and the health of societies as well. It's, as I said, a no-brainer. Of course, the private sector has other incentives as well, but I think even there, we can think about women's health products as an untapped, you know, market opportunity as well, because there's so much unmet need. I think one of the challenges that comes up there is that there's not always visibility into those market opportunities. So there's actually a good opportunity for philanthropic partners to partner with the private sector and look at ways they can do market intelligence, you know, market shaping, de-risking, and other market interventions to help create the incentives for the private sector to invest more heavily. So that's really more on the what funders can fund, but I think also, to your point, it's also about who we fund. And I think there's, you know, no doubt that one of the root causes of why women's health products, as Her Excellency the First Lady was pointing out so clearly, one of the root causes of why there aren't women's health products is that there aren't women decision makers in the rooms. So when funders look at what to fund, it's also selecting companies that are prioritizing women in their policies, companies that have those diversity, you know, objectives, and also funding the pipeline of talent that's actually needed. So it's not just the what we fund, but also the who we fund, and really being specific to say we need to have women in those decision-making positions.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Dr. Sabin. The role of government as Aneto said earlier, the role of government in fostering the right environment for biotechnology and biopharmaceutical research can't be understated. In Rwanda, this industry is still in its inception, in its beginning stages, and it offers a unique opportunity to be inclusive right from the beginning. Where other people have had to reach back and change their systems, we have the opportunity to make it how we want it from the beginning. How can we leverage this opportunity to drive more equitable health outcomes for women?
Great. Thank you, Anik. Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, the First Lady, I think after your inspiring speech, what I had to say about what women can do in science, what we all can do changing our policies, and how we create environment for research and manufacturing for women and even men is clearly that it starts with leadership. And what we do as leaders in different places. So the question Nick highlighted is creating this environment is not something you do overnight. And you can't take shortcuts to do that. So it has really to start from even the kindergarten, where you teach kids how carbon fixes on oxygen to form CO2, and how really you get water, what it means from the basic science. And this has to be the first thing to do from education perspective, up to the other levels of teaching. Unfortunately, we're seeing across different countries, women and young girls joining schools from early years, primary, secondary schools in science. But as you go up, there's a kind of lost lost to follow-up of more men continuing and women and girls stopping at some extent, which at the end is a product you're seeing that a few women into top science or discoveries because of different factors. Some are related to the legacy of many things that there are things that women cannot do, including science, including engineering, as you highlighted. But things are changing. We have a biomedical engineer on this panel already, but it's not enough. What we need to do is actually to create or to remove those barriers that are stopping these fast runners to reach the levels we need. Like you've seen in recent pandemic, women were at the forefront of discovering the most efficacious vaccines, including BioNTech itself, with my colleague here has already highlighted one of the discoverers of BioNTech Pfizer vaccine was a woman who is currently also doing a lot of interesting research. We are also seeing the same with other Moderna vaccine. You all know the doctor behind who has also contributed to that. And I'm sure and confident that maybe the next vaccine is going to come from one of the women's in this room or beyond, or behind this room, probably on this panel, Nadej or Anik. So these are the things that we are very happy to see happening from the journey of education. But beyond education, there are also other enablers that we need to put in place as policymakers, as scientists, as leaders. And the most important one is also infrastructure. The laboratories that we put in place, research centers, even research clubs, networks you talked about. These are the things that need to be done now so that we see results in the coming years. There's no shortcut. And also the leadership that creates that environment. There's evidence that countries that are most successful in economies are those who invest in science, innovation, research, and at the end you see actually these are driving economies heavily. There's facts about that. And sometimes we may stop at a point and say, okay, we are not seeing result immediately, and so we're not going to continue doing that. So in science, the thing we see in biomanufacturing, from microscope through manufacturing to human body, it takes time. It can even take hundreds of years. But the cost to not doing it is very, very high. So starting now, it's important, and having that patience to see that it's evolving, it's happening, is also critical. So those are the environments we need to put in place. But the other aspect is a culture. The culture of how, even if the policies are there, the enabling factors are there, how do we, from this legacy we had where women are staying home, cleaning houses, not going to school, changing into now more women in schools, like the case of Rwanda that you highlighted. How do we do more of that? And understanding, even if you go to school, you can do maths, you can do physics, you can be an engineer, you can be a scientist like Nadej, you can go to the highest levels of spending nights and days in the lab without being compromised because you're a woman, because you're a young girl. So those are the factors we need really, really to put in place as everyone has a role to play. But from the cultural aspects is also as important as the policies and books we put in place. Number two is what do we do with the science that women contribute to? We're seeing many diseases affecting men and women differently. Let me take two examples, like cervical cancer. It's a disease. It's actually an important one that is affecting many, many women and girls currently. As we plan to eliminate cervical cancer among women and girls, it shouldn't be an issue of women and girls. It should be an issue of all of us. And should be the same as we work together to also address the issue of prostate cancer, which is another main specific issue. But what affects women affects men equally, and addressing it has to be a collective effort. So maybe to cut this story short, I want to highlight two inequities that we need to address jointly. There's a gender issue that I just highlighted, but there's also regional issues in terms of science and research. And using two statistics, if you look at the research output that, let's say, our continent contributes to the world, it's only 2%. And the spending on research and science from our continent is 1.3%. And the level of patent that we register as a continent is 0.1%. So this is an example of regional inequity that we have to address equally as we address the gender inequity. Now, being a woman in African continent or another resource-limited continent can be a double burden. So addressing this, need also to look at the regional gaps and inequities that we are talking about and move forward into actions. If we need to see results in the next 10 years, we have to plant the seeds today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this insight. Just some follow-ups on the questions you've been asked. I think my first one will be for Dr. Nadej. As someone who has been in research for as long as you have been and who's reached the top levels of what research can be, what do you think for people who might want to have a parcours that's similar to yours? What were your biggest enablers that allowed you to go as far as you've gone with the trajectory that you've had?
So, yeah, thank you for the question. If I speak, as a woman, of course, I'd say that one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is when you decide to go abroad. It's when you're home, you have opportunities, you have people who will more easily trust you. And when you decide to leave everything, go abroad and be a foreigner, it can be really challenging. And I spoke to some of the younger girls who try to who are using the same path as me, and they would say, "Oh, me, it's particularly difficult because I have this and this issue." And I would keep telling them how we are all facing the same issues. It's always difficult, and the key is you go back home, you scream, you cry, you do whatever you want, and then the next day you come and you try again, and it's all about. It's all about continuing. The only time when you see the real failure is when you just stop trying. So it's all about continuing, going again and again, always trying to have network. So we talked about it earlier, as you mentioned, having networks, having group of people, women and men who have been through what you've been through, and then exchanging, sharing your experience, and then you realize that you're not the only one who have gone through all these difficulties. And this is so helpful, realizing I'm not the only one, they did it, so I can do it as well. So it's really the believing that you can get there and then keep going, and then you will keep failing. Again, this year I had a failure, and it was surprising because I thought you think you get to a certain point, it will be easier. It's not. So you go back home, again, you cry, you scream, you do whatever you want, and you come back the next day and you keep trying. It's all about network, keeping in touch with people. That has helped me so much. Directly contacting people, going on LinkedIn. I'm always trying to get better at it, with Twitter. It's all about the networking, so showing that you are capable of doing, accomplishing a lot. It's all about believing in yourself and then keep going. And then you will fail, but then just keep going.
Thank you so much. What a rallying cry. The only failure is when you stop trying. That is really something for all of us to keep. So just keeping on the topic of networking, my question is for Aneto. As someone in this space, how can, not just women, we talked about having women's networks in this space, but also how can men in these industries also support women who are trying to break in?
I think there is a cultural shift happening, and I'll use myself as an example. 20 years ago, the way I look at women in the industry now is completely different. So there is a cultural shift that is happening. And like I said, one of the first things is to be deliberate. Sometimes it starts from deliberate actions, then it becomes natural. When I started my career, I was blessed to have lots of women working with me. I was really blessed, and rather than look at it, and it changed me. You have to, as men, you need to leave yourself open to the process, because you also learn, because it changed me. Trust me, it changed me a lot in terms of being perceptive to feelings, understanding the diversity and care that comes. It just balanced the way I managed people, because women bring a different perspective at times. When you're looking at getting things done, and in the discussion, there's a care aspect that comes into it, you also learn. So first of all, you just have to be open to change. And sometimes companies help people, because by companies being deliberate to talk about it, being deliberate to ask you even what's your diversity factor, how are you managing this person, how is this person excelling in her career, then you start to be deliberate. You start to break that barrier of coming closer, understanding, and giving them the opportunity. And once you let that door open and you see the way people's career flourish, then you become a changed person and a very balanced person. I really am very proud to say that I've worked with so many women that has really made me who I am today. I became surprised, when women would tell you part of their pains, and you're wondering, why are they telling me? And you're able to help them out. And I think the most impact that came to me was when a direct report really came out as a wow factor to say, hey, you helped me through this. So as people in the industry, you have to be open to change. The industry has changed. I need to keep changing. There are more women leaders. There are more women in engineering. When I started in manufacturing, on the operations floor was male dominated. There was one changing room. As the years have gone by, it has changed. There are two changing rooms. There are more females on the floor. Operation managers are women. They are managing men. So things have changed. So first of all, openness. You have to be open to change, because the times are changing and we need to ride with it.
My next question is to Liz. You mentioned what gets funded and who. As funding entities, when you're looking at who to fund, it's not just looking at whether they have women in their C-suite. What other factors are you looking out for when you're looking for initiatives that you want to support, but you want to make sure that this is truly doing the good that they say it's going to do?
Of course, it's not just women in the C-suite, right? I mean, we need women at every level, and to what Minister Saban was saying, we need to start at the very young ages. So I think from a funder's perspective, there's really ample opportunity for funders of all different priorities to be involved in this work, whether you're someone who is funding early childhood education, right? How do we build STEM focused early childhood education for primary schools and high schools? If you're someone who's focused more on the manufacturing side, you can be looking more at who's in what is the makeup of the company, right? And actually looking at how are they prioritizing women. And of course, I think you need to look at not just what's written on paper, right? Because every organization has a statement that says they're committed, but the proof is really in who's sitting in the decision maker roles, who's in the offices, who's actually on the manufacturing floor, as you're saying. So I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities for different funders to be involved at all levels. I think the one caveat from a funder standpoint that I think is worth putting out here is that funders are not great everyone likes to do their own small thing. And I think what's so important in terms of building biomanufacturing capacity and this pipeline of talent is really that funders are following the lead of those who are actually setting out the strategy. So in the case of the government of Rwanda, right, and funders are actually backing the strategies that are laid out, because we can't have, if we really want to create this fundamental shift and create more women's health products and create a broader pipeline of women doing this work, it can't be small pieces here and there. It has to be backing a comprehensive plan to really make this happen. So that would be my encouragement to funders who are in the room.
Thank you very much. And my final question is for Dr. Sabin. You mentioned the need to have all these positive reinforcements and positive images for young girls who are interested in science. In the case of Rwanda, where we've seen success stories while dealing with women's health issues, how can we as a community, because education is not only about school, how can we as a community, Rwandan and at large, ensure that children get those positive reinforcements? What can we do on our side to make sure that they see these stories, to make sure that they know about these women inventors who are working on the vaccines that helped us at such a critical time? How can we really make sure they get those positive reinforcements, not just at school, but in their day-to-day lives?
Great. I think there are 3 points that I can highlight here. One is that we've moved from an era of doing things using muscles and physical forces to implement things like driving machines, pushing whatever, construction, carrying things. Now we are in an era of using our brains, our thinking, our innovations, our patience to do the same things, even more of what we were doing before. And that is changing what you've observing in your career, that it's the technology, this science of today, it's not a men's thing. And that has been actually rooting into back in the culture, in the history, that men were actually seeing themselves doing things while women and girls staying behind for things that are not requiring that energy, or because there are no rights to participate or contribute. We have to enforce that message that things have changed, even if there are men who are still believing in that historical thinking. It's time to wake up and move into modern world where men and women have equal rights, have equal opportunities, and they can drive and change things, including the highest level of science that will change our world for the better. That's number 2. Number 3 is how practically do we do that? It shouldn't be men telling women, go come and do that. It should be also women telling men, look, we can do this with you. It's not about women doing it, then men going back in the where it was before. It's actually joint work that will help us to see more discoveries, more vaccines, more women into engineering, into basic science, and other fields. So I see changes happening, but my worry is that it's not at the speed it should be. We're seeing still restricted areas where actually women could do even better. And when you talk about science, you talk about patience, you talk about curiosity, you talk about thinking and innovating something new. And naturally, I think women are better in those kind of steps I'm talking about than men. They are more patient, they are more curious, they are more innovative, they can multitask and find solutions better than men. So I see actually women driving the future of science than men, but as we see that change happening, we should not say that men should stay behind. So we have to keep our family connections. Because at the end, every man has been on this earth because there was a woman who helped him to be here. So we all belong to one community. And I see that happening. It's just a matter of mindset changing, policy adaptation changing, and also networking and make sure we can't accept to live in 100 years back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our panel. We're going to take some questions from the audience at this stage. The gentleman in white.
Hello, thank you very much for this amazing panel. My name is Bruce Sikindi, and I represent Kigali Global Shapers, which is a branch of the World Economic Forum. I love this conversation and love the idea of manufacturing and setting Africa as a pioneer and as an energizer for catalyzing manufacturing globally. So my question is, what is the vision for Africa's role in the supply chain of biopharmaceutical manufacturing, and how can we play towards that? How does the young population learn and gear towards that vision? And if you could specify specifically in the context of recognizing the potential of natural remedies that communities already use, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Sorry, was this question addressed to the whole panel or to?
I think it would be perhaps best serviced
Yes.
with Mr. Aneto.
Thank you so much.
Is this better? Okay, great. My name is Mariela Munyuzangao, and I work for Partners in Health. My question will be addressed to Dr. Nadej. First of all, congratulations on your journey. It's very inspiring for some of us who are still trying to achieve that. When we see it, we've seen improvements globally in participation of girls in STEM fields and graduating. However, there's still gaps when it comes to higher level decision-making positions. What would be your recommendation or your call to action for leaders such as Honorable Minister to make sure that women also achieve those higher positions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mariela. I think we can answer the first two questions before moving on to the next. So our first question is for Neto regarding the vision for Africa's role in the supply chain and also recognizing the potential of natural remedies.
I think I will talk more about Africa's role in the supply chain. We all witnessed, especially for vaccines during the COVID period, whereby lots of countries in Africa had to wait. Right now, it's a problem that we're trying to solve. So it's not about, right now we are setting up a vaccine manufacturing factory here in Rwanda for Africa, which is meaning that it's not just the logistics to get here, but that the source is from here. It is a big step. It is a bold step because there are so many things that come with it in terms of building the right capabilities, having the right labs, having regulatory to also be able to support us to release. There will be other things that will come with it. But at least the first step has started, whereby the manufacturing plant is being built. And this is a step, and other steps will come in future as that starts. Because, once one person puts a step forward, others start to follow. And BioNTech is here playing a leading role in making this happen right now. And we are super, super supported by the government that has really given us an ease of doing business. So from the government point of view, it is something that they've looked at us and supported us to see that this supply chain is really going to happen.
Thank you so much. Dr. Nadej, the question was regarding the gaps at higher level of research decision making and how we can fix that.
Yes, so what I realized is that during all my studies, so like in college, there was way more women than men at university in biology. It depends, it's different compared for different fields, but in biology we would have more women. But the higher you get in levels, in seniority, you would have less and less women. It is really the clear cut between junior level and senior level. And one thing that really helped me is having, as we mentioned earlier, these groups, networking groups that really, there are places where you can have real conversations, hearing about previous experiences. In France, it was called Women in Science. In the US, we have something else called WISE, for women in science and stem cells. So it's all about exchanging our experiences, seeing what we've been through, and also realizing that it's not all about the hard work. It's like when I started, I would work hard and then just think that it's good enough, it will be enough, I will be able to show my value just by doing hard work, but I was really shy, so I wouldn't really communicate with people, not really exchange. And I realized how this is not helpful at all. You really need to connect, have a network, just simply go and eat with the colleagues, just to exchange with them, learn from them, and then show your worth. Because it was naive of me to just think that by working hard, you just come and you're good. Not at all. You always have to go to conferences, like participate to different events, to meet people, exchange with them. And then also, so this is one part. And then the second major factor that prevents women from accessing higher level positions is when women decide to get pregnant. And you can really see how hard it is for them to get back at a job or having more opportunities because they've been forgotten for some time. So what our institute does is that we have childcare in the building, or my previous, this is really helpful. And my previous supervisor fought to have places where women can pump, just breastfeeding, so that they don't have to stay home and miss on some work. So for being a feminist means if you want to stay home, go for it. You have to have the choice. And if you don't want having a child to prevent you from accessing higher positions, it's also really great if the system, industries, governments develop places where you can, take care of your kid, but then at the same time go to work, or also have paternity leave, because it's unfair that it's just the woman that has to stay home and take care of the kid. So yeah, all these different elements that I realized I saw are a major impact and are preventing women to get to higher levels.
Thank you very much, Nadej. We will have some question from this side. The lady in the front. Yes. Oh, so they're bringing it to you.
Thank you. My name is Desta Lako, and I am with Amref Health Africa. So I'm going to actually, hello to Dr. Savan and Liz and everyone. I'm actually going to focus on Africa. And there are two questions that I have. One is, what is the role of genomics, in particular in manufacturing of medicines and vaccines that support women? And is there an investment case out there that we can make for Africa? That's number one, and maybe Liz, that's for you. The second piece is around the importance of STEM and encouraging women to go into that. And I understand that there are all levels, whether it's breaking the glass ceiling at the highest level or even entry level. What kind of investments are being made? And this is not necessarily to you, Liz, but just in general, what kind of investments are we seeing to encourage young women and girls to enter into the research and manufacturing space? And if I can have one more, since we're in Rwanda, how has AMA
Sorry,
supported?
we'd like to be able to give as many people the opportunity, but thank you so much.
Now it's better. My name is Stefan German, Fondation Botnar, a Swiss-based foundation in Basel, which is actually a life science cluster. We're focusing on adolescent health. My question goes to you, Ministers, Sabine. What is the role of WHO and the World Intellectual Property Organization in enabling decentralization of biopharmaceutical research and specifically manufacturing into Africa?
I wonder if we have time for another question. Let's go on this side. The lady, yes.
My name is Lilian Tsengyumva, and I work for an organization called Resonate, which is based here in Rwanda. And our role is to empower girls so that we meet halfway with the policymakers. And my question goes to Nadej, Dr. Nadej. We have a program called Rise and STEM to build the resilience and confidence for women who are in science and technology, engineering and mathematics. Today it's really inspiring for us because we've been focusing on women who are in science and especially IT, but today I just learned that we also have to focus on women in biomedical engineering. So we have a big pool of women we have to support, and sometimes it's challenging to see who to focus on. So sometimes we are like, should we focus on girls who are in O-level, who are about to make a choice to go to science, or those who are about to graduate in university before they go to work environments, those male-dominated environments? Who should we focus on so that we can have as many women like you?
Thank you so much. I think we'll answer those questions for now, just for the interest of time. So our first question was about the role of genomics, which Liz will be able to answer.
I think I'll pass the genomics to one of the technical experts on the panel. But since I have the mic, just to build on what Nadej said about how to ensure that more women are able to sort of advance their studies, the one thing that hasn't come up in this conversation is access to sexual and reproductive health services. And I think we really just cannot, we've talked about after women have children, but we really cannot expect that women are going to have the ability to move into some of these positions if they can't control their reproduction and when and whether they want to have children. So I think that's just a fundamental thing we need to put in place all over the world, and a fundamental right for women to be able to make that choice. And Desta, since I'm not answering your genomics question, I will comment on AMA. And I think one of the exciting things for funders that are looking to get involved in the manufacturing space is that you don't necessarily have to fund manufacturing itself, right? So there's both, the basic research, which Nadej has talked a lot about, and there's a huge bottleneck there, right, for women researchers who can't study women's health and study the basic science necessary for women's health because there isn't the fundamental data, and they're in a catch-22. So there's the upstream work that needs to be funded. Then there's also all the downstream work, and I think there's an amazing opportunity to look at, as we're building the manufacturing capacity for vaccines, how can we develop the same capacity for women's health and then use that as anchor products to develop AMA and the other regulatory mechanisms? So how can funders think sort of holistically across the whole value chain? And I think that's where some of the most exciting opportunities emerge, because of course the manufacturing facilities themselves, as you said, are just one part of the equation. You also need the regulatory environment to take it from country to country to country, and then all the downstream implications as well.
Thank you very much. Our next question was for Dr. Sabin on the role of the WHO. Would you like to comment? Oh, no, okay.
Sure. I think that we're discussing who is going to address the genomics questions. We try to contribute to that. But I think if there's something really, really important we learned from the last 3 years in the pandemic is how do we use this as an opportunity to build capacity in our research environment, and in particular the genomics aspect and the omics, and how we use that to also discover more and know more on in a surveillance perspective, because it talk about diseases and how they affect our own health and how our body responds to that. How do we know how to develop therapies and adaptive treatments? So genomics is probably the most important gap that we had before. Now we are seeing it as an opportunity to build our capacity, both from lab, from manufacturing, but also from treatment, the people's lives. So I know many countries are working on it, but for Rwanda, I see the DG of RBC here. We've been investing a lot into these capabilities with different partners, detecting different pathogens and how they mutate, different mutations that affect us or will affect us in the future, coming from environment or from humans to environment or even to animals. So that, to me, the few reflections I can highlight. But I think it is connect to manufacturing very closely. Once you know which pathogens, you go in the lab, you sequence the genome, then from there you can develop therapies, especially messenger RNA, mRNA therapies. It's very much a new discovery that we're spending 10 years to develop vaccine. Now, with BioNTech, it took only 9 months. That is really the biggest advances we've seen in the history of research. So that is a few things I can mention. And on the other point on patent and what WHO is doing, I may not speak on behalf of WHO, but I know this has been really a discussion that we had in the last 2-3 years. How do we share the knowledge? How the discovery that is done from one end of the world can be also help the other side of the world, because disease can really travel in a few hours across. So how do we share these opportunities to solve global problems? As Excellency First Lady mentioned, solutions from the south can help on the problems in the north, or vice versa. How comprehensively do we do that? And I know WHO has been leading on these discussions, different scientists, different leaders across the world, how the patent is shared. But should not be only the patent of something already discovered, but how do we discover new things? That is the discussion we're having here. Maybe the best treatment is yet to be discovered. And it will not come from far if we empower and help and create environments for our young kids and young researchers to be able to sit in the lab and find these next codes that is going to fix the issue of cancer, for example. Cancer therapies that is now the main killer in the world, like other diseases. Malaria, how do we get the next therapies and vaccines for this disease that are taking lives? So we should be seen comprehensively, the patent being part of it. But what else do we need to invest to be able to create a safer world? Diseases are not going to disappear, but we should outsmart the diseases because we can.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, for the interest of time, we've reached this segment where we're going to ask our panelists to just give us closing statements before we wrap up our session. Thank you very much. I think we can start from...
I think for me, one of the last words that I would say, as I started by saying, actions are very deliberate. And as we go through the process, encouraging women to get into the industry, putting systems in place to ensure their career can grow. One other thing that needs to be very evident is that we need to celebrate them. We have to celebrate them, we have to recognize them, because the more you recognize, the more you celebrate, then the more you draw, more you break the barriers, and more women come into the industry. And this will be my last point.
Yeah, I think I would just say that I just think there's tremendous opportunity, particularly on the continent in Rwanda, to look at how the continent become a leader in women's health products and in demonstrating a different model of how you can build that industry. And it's such an honor to be on this panel, to see the government of Rwanda putting this panel together at the time in which you're just building out some of this industry, to think about it up front as opposed to after the fact. And so many places right now are thinking about this after the fact. So we're so happy to be a partner in this work and just very supportive and excited to see what's to come.
So my few points as we conclude is that investing in women in science is the most important business you can do and never regret. So we have to do that. And it has to be a comprehensive priority for all of us, not just governments, not just NGOs, also other philanthropies, funders. We should not be using the same sentences in the past that we are funding PhD-owned researchers when you know that there are very few women who are actually having those PhDs. So what else are the criteria we should be basing on to say we're funding this because there are people who can do things happen?
And I'm going to cheat a little bit and include the question I had earlier in the answer, just to say that I think it's amazing to have this kind of system that will really help and guide women throughout their career, because I had no idea what I wanted to do until high school, because I talked to someone who explained to me a little bit what I can do in my professional life by doing biology. So this really helped me. If I didn't talk to that person, I would be doing something completely different. I wanted to do mathematics or architecture, I don't even remember. But this really helps to know what comes next, because I had no idea of what to picture for the professional life by doing biology. So really guiding people throughout their career is really helpful. And for the closing point, I think that if COVID pandemic taught us anything, is that if we put all the research, energy into one specific aim, we can accomplish it so fast. In less than 2 years, we had a vaccine. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So it's all about putting all the efforts and the work into allowing women to get to higher positions, giving them opportunities, and that's how we will get there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the First Lady of Rwanda, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. We've come to the end of our session. Allow me to thank our panelists for their time, knowledge, insights, and recommendations that they shared with us today. Please give them a round of applause. I would also really like to thank the audience for your attention and your very pertinent questions that allowed us to further our discussion. I believe we leave today with a deeper understanding of women's roles and challenges in biopharmaceutical research and manufacturing, and what risks we take by not having enough of women's representation in this space. I think we also leave with a renewed commitment to be gender inclusive in all of the spheres of our lives. I thank you for your attention and have a wonderful rest of your day.